Even in the midst of strange and unique times like we've been experiencing in 2020, there are silver linings to be found. In this case, it's a return for the second time in the same season to the home of the United States Grand Prix Circuit of the Americas. There's the view from Turn 1 down across this great facility as it today hosts the 9th round of GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, and round 7 of the GT Sports Club. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Creamer, joined by Calvin Fish. And we also have Ryan Marine down amongst the cars in the pit lane. But before we get any further, what we want to do is give you a tour of this remarkable 3.427-mile track from a great ride behind the wheel of this very car earlier in the weekend with Jan Halen.
My name is Jan Halen. I'm here at Cota with Wright Motorsports in the Porsche GT3R, getting ready to start a lap, coming onto the front straightaway now, approaching the start-finish line. 5th gear, reaching 150 mile an hour, hard in the brakes at the 100 sign, big brake zone, lots of opportunity to overtake, down the hill into turn 2, 130 mile an hour. Really fun corner, really feeling the downforce here of these GT3 cars. And then into the famous S's here at Cota. Hard on the brakes, rolling a lot of speed. 4th gear, down to 3rd, hard on the curbing, back to power, setting up for turn 7. 3rd gear, just a little lift, back to power. Turn 8, down to 2nd gear, and then up the hill. Turn 9, lots of curbing on the inside and on the outside, going down the hill. Setting up for turn 11, again one of the better places to overtake. Very wide on the entry, down the 1st gear, and then working on a good exit to get onto the back straightaway. Fastest, longest straightaway on the track here at Cota, reaching 160 mile an hour in 6th gear. Again, good opportunity to overtake. Going into turn 12, braking at the 120 sign. Down the 1st gear again, using up all the curbing on the exit. From 1st up to 3rd, down to 1st gear again. Hard on the brakes. Very slow section of the track here. Up to 3rd again, approaching the slowest corner of the track, the hairpin here, turn 15. And then setting up for the carousel. Double right-hander. Lots of power on the way in, just a small lift and then back to power, 100 mile an hour at the center. Lining up for turn 19, lots of curbing there on the exit, lots of track limits being called. Make sure we keep 2 wheels on the curbing. And then down the 1st gear for turn 20, last corner coming onto the front straightaway. And that was a lap at Cota.
And what a lap it was right there in that Matters Wright Racing, Wright Motorsports entry by Jan Halen. And, we talked about the return to Cota. Another wonderful return. In this case, it's the return of the number 80 Acura NSX GT3 from Racer's Edge Motorsports, the MBRP Performance Exhaust entry. Ziad Gondor will be starting that car. It's missed the last couple of rounds, but Kyle Marcelli is back, and he's standing by with the 3rd member of our team, Ryan Marine.
Thank you, Greg. Yes, so great to have the 2nd NSX back on the grid, and our reigning Pro-Am champion as well, Kyle Marcelli. Had to sit out a couple of rounds for reasons really outside of anybody's control. And a different co-driver this weekend than Martin Barkey, who was with you for that championship last year and the start to the year this year. First of all, just how good does it feel to be back racing and to do so here at Circuit of the Americas?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. It's fantastic to be back with Racer's Edge and back in the NSX. It was tough sitting at home and, watching the races on TV. So yeah, just thrilled to be back. Want to welcome Ziad here. He's new to our team, and he's been a joy to work with so far, and he's getting to learn the Acura. He seems quite comfortable with it. It's a relatively stout grid, although a small grid. It's not going to be an easy fight for us here today.
Despite the fact you sat out for a couple of months, does it maybe help that you come back and you do so at a track here at Cota that you've already been to once this year?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, this place is becoming a bit like a second home. We spend a lot of time here. We've done a lot of laps now in the Acura. Track conditions aren't too far different from March. We're seeing some temps that are a bit higher, but right now we've got overcast conditions. Pace is relatively on par from what it was back in March. Unfortunately, we've had a bit of a BOP adjustment that has not worked in our favor, and the Acura has been slowed a little bit. So we've got to make it up in other places around the racetrack. And like I said, it's going to be a tough fight, but one that we're all looking forward to.
Once again, welcome back and good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely great to have that car with that team back. And Kyle is a true talent, and I think we saw one of his finest drives ever, in my opinion, at VIR earlier this year, where he outdueled Trent Hinman to the win, and both drivers got out of the cars absolutely knackered. It was brilliant stuff.
Yeah, and we expect more of the same today. As he said, a bit of BOP adjustments to the Acuras. Don't have quite that sharp edge that we've seen so far this year, but great to see Kyle back on the grid. He's certainly one of the backbones of our championship.
Absolutely. You take a look there at the beautiful Ferrari. We'll talk about where it qualified, which was spectacular. But, of course, this is the Global GT World Challenge, and it's the manufacturer points that are key. And as we come in here, currently it is Mercedes is one of the manufacturers involved. Ferrari was, and recently Lamborghini announced that it too is going for manufacturer championship points. Now, we don't have any running here this weekend, but those three manufacturers all part of it. And so far, Mercedes has had it pretty much their own way, but with what we saw in qualifying, this Ferrari is going to gain some points.
Yeah, they look really tough. They've swept both pole positions, including today's with Martin Fuentes aboard that Ferrari 488 GT3. So they're going to be tough to beat here this weekend, and a big opportunity for them with the late withdrawal of the 04 CrowdStrike Mercedes, which was the championship leading car.
Yeah, that's a huge development, a family emergency for George Kurtz, and they had to withdraw from the action. This Mercedes here, this is not one of the newer Evo cars, but it's still showing some really good speed and very impressive run here. Russell Ward and Alec Udell, who's from the Woodlands, Texas, very much considers this his home track. And nice to have Alex, a former champion, and then Pirelli World Challenge, and one very talented driver behind the wheel. There is the MBRP entry, and the team car behind it of Blackstock and Hinman, who qualified second overall. Shelby did, Cal, but that does put him on pole and in the silver category, and we'll see what that Windward Racing car can do to give them a bit of a run.
Yeah, I think that should be a really good fight between Shelby and young Alec here at the start of this race. That Windward machine is not the current Evo kit on the Mercedes as the previous generation car. So on these long straightaways, it doesn't have quite the downforce of the current Mercedes, so it should be a little bit quicker there. And in qualifying, they were only separated by 1/10 of a second.
And I wanted to get back to something, going back to Jan Helen's onboard lap. The one thing you see as we look at the GT Sports Club grid, we'll talk about that really quickly as well, but an awful lot of time spent bouncing over curbs here, and that can take a toll in a 90-minute race.
It really can. I mean, it's quite possible to get some kind of suspension mechanical failure if you abuse them too much. And basically, as we're looking at that red and white stripe, that's what they're saying on the racetrack. Red and white is all right. So when you look at some of these corner exits and you see the red and white curbing, you have to have some part of that Pirelli P0 touching it. Otherwise, you're going to get warned on it, and repeated offenders will suddenly get a drive-through penalty. So it's a very safe racetrack, but it's certainly one that drivers can abuse a little bit in terms of finding a bit more real estate out there.
Take a look here at the starting lineup for this race. And again, Martin Fuentes in that Squadra Corsa, the Hublot and Ferrari Fort Lauderdale and Concourse Club Ferrari, late lap, popped that thing up on pole. And just to make a point of it, in the second qualifying session that set the grid for tomorrow, Baptista put it on the overall pole as well. That Ferrari's liking this place.
It really is, and they really turned things around, because rolling off the truck, as we call it, their first initial runs on the racetrack with the setup they came with was not good, and they were struggling, and they turned things around, and by the time they threw some fresh Pirelli P0s at it in qualifying on light fuel load, the car was dynamite quick for both of their drivers. So as we said, great opportunity for them. They come into this championship round only 1 point out of the lead, but the championship leaders will not compete in either round here this weekend, so potentially 50 points up for grab as we head to Indy in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's massive, and you can see lights out on the Acura NSX, the official safety vehicle of GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. And right behind this car, which is that number 80 car, you see that beautiful blue and orange, and that is the the Audi R8 LMS Ultra of James Safronis, one of the most experienced, perhaps now the most experienced active driver in what was World Challenge competition, now GT World Challenge, and he has decided to run in GT Sports Club in that GT3 category machine, the number 14, the GT3, running in the titanium class. As you take a look at the current points in this category, you can see how close it is. And what a true gut punch it is for Colin Brown and George Kurtz to have to miss now these 2 rounds. But of course, family always comes first, and we're wishing George and his family that everything goes well, dealing with what they're going to be dealing with here, but still tough.
It really is. It's disappointing for them, and we certainly wish George and his family all the best. But we'll focus on today's race, and I think in this sports club race here, James Safronis, okay, he's on the pole for the sports club class, but he's 4th quick overall. He's 27th year of World Challenge competition. He's got all of the experience in the world, and he's also got experience of winning here at the early rounds of the championship at Cota, back with Jerome Bleekemolen. And so he's trying to make a statement here. He's not going to be around tomorrow for other family commitments, whereas his wife's birthday, so he's going to head home after the race here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said the lights were out on the NSX GT, or the Acura NSX, but they are on. I think it was just the angle I was looking at it, though. There had been contemplation that they might do 2 formation laps, and apparently that is indeed the case. But yeah, it should be fun. Remember Jason Daskalos, who starts outside of the front row in the GT Sports Club qualifying in a similar Audi R8 LMS Ultra. He hung with the back of the GT3 field for much of the first part of those 40 minutes that they ran at Sonoma in his races, so it's certainly not out of the realm.
No, I think both of those guys have potential to mix it up here in the early going. Great to see Mark Issa back. He ran Cota earlier this year in the GT Challenge race, and also ran Road America in the Sports Club races, so good to see him back from injury as well.
Yeah, had a bit of a testing incident. I think it was at Road Atlanta, and he's rebounded nicely and ended up with 2 poles, a win, and a 2nd overall in GT Sports Club in his debut in that category, again in a GT3 spec car. And that's part of the GT Sports Club concept. These beautiful GT2 class machines, in this case the beautiful Porsche, 700 horsepower monsters, but they don't have anywhere near the downforce of the GT3 car, which has less power. But they did open it up, and they said you can run an older model of the GT3 car. There's lots of them out there to try and get people to come out and to show that this is a place to be able to come out and run these beautiful cars in a pro setting. And Marquisa taking advantage of it, Jason Daskalos, and now, of course, James Safronis. And one of the reasons that James is doing it is precisely to showcase the fact that these GT3 cars that might be not the current models, there's still a place for them to race.
There really are, and you can buy one of those cars relatively cheaply. Admittedly, motor racing is quite expensive at this GT3 and GT2 level, but certainly a great opportunity to be here and compete at some of the best venues in North American racing. Getting back to the GT2 cars, I mean, they're going to be about 12 to 15 miles an hour quicker down the straightaways here, so certainly a chance for an overlap there. And Ryan Gate's gone unbeaten this year. Jason Bell has followed him home at every race, but what a day for Jason Bell. Got his 1st overall victory. Yes. He and Andrew Davis earlier today in GT4 Sprint X competition, so congrats to him. He's going to be on a high right now.
Yeah, didn't have a lot of time to be able to celebrate, as he knew he'd be starting in this one that was coming up here. But yeah, just a brilliant drive. Jason has been on form. He had a 4th in his class in the GT4 Sprint category. Then he and Andrew get the overall win. He really has been on form from the drop of the first green flag here this weekend, and it's been great to see. Lights are definitely out on the Acura NSX now. So again, quickly, 90 minutes of competition. At the 40-minute mark, the checker will fly for the GT Sports Club cars, and then 5 minutes later, right, is when the pit opens for the mandatory pit stops. Yeah,
45 to 55-minute mark in this race. Mandatory pit stop for the GT3 cars here today. 77 seconds is the amount of time that you can spend on pit lane. You do have a 1-second joker to work with throughout both races this weekend, so maybe as low as 76 and a bit will suffice today and not get the penalty. During that stop, you have to change all 4 tires, add a little bit of fuel to get to the checkered flag, and a mandatory driver change as well. So lots going on there, not much time to play with.
It's all going to come to fruition right now as Martin Fuentes, after that great qualifying run, is going to lead Shelby Blackstock, his front row mate, and the rest of the cars up to the start-finish line here to get this one going. And that run into turn 1, Cal, could be exciting.
It is really unique. 133 feet of elevation change between the start-finish line and the turn 1 apex. Means you can leave your braking really late. It's wide open up there. You can go 3, 4, 5 abreast. So we'll see what these guys will put together here in this opening corner.
That first white line they just hit, that's the finish line and the timing line, but for the green flags, it's underneath this gantry. Watch for the flagman. to let it fly, and we will be underway with round 9 and round 7 respectively. And a beautiful move by Isa, who jumped around the pole sitter of Sofronis in GT Sports Club, but it is Fuentes, but way down to the inside goes David Askew, and there's a bump and a hit, and around goes Fred Pordad. Jason Bell noses into him.
Yeah, Ziad Gandor, I think, just turned Fred Pordad there, so I'm not sure if there's too much damage there. Key is if you can get this car back to life. Meanwhile, up front, Martin Fuentes timed that perfectly. It's almost like he spoke to his mate Mark Isa and told him what he was going to do, because Mark got the jump from middle of the pack as well.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. A great launch by both of them. My one question is David Askew. It looked like he may have had all 4 tires inside of that pit exit stripe. We've seen somebody get penalized with a drive-through for that in another category this weekend, so we'll be following that. But nonetheless, it is Fuentes leading away from Blackstock, then Udell in that silver machine. And look at this, already the battling going on as with that little bump and go here, you can see that it is Sofronis right on the 6 of Jason Daskalos as they go running up, and this long run, Cal, from turn 11 to 12.
Yeah, it really is a monster run down here as we hit the brakes here for the first time. So Shelby Blackstock putting the pressure on Martin Fuentes, and it's actually Sofronis making a move here on Ziad Gandor.
Yes.
Daskalos runs behind this duo.
We're talking about Ziad joining Kyle Marcelli, and that Ziad had run in the championship a couple of times, and he's put up some feisty performances. He comes out of Ferrari Challenge, championship driver in that category, and he has shown a willingness to get after it and go race, and that might be a kind of interesting pairing.
Yeah, it could be really good. We certainly know that Marcelli has great pace in that car. So much success last year winning the Pro-Am Championship with Martin Barkey. We look forward to seeing Martin back in our paddock. He's a real character and loves his racing, but obviously with the COVID restrictions, particularly with travel in and out of Canada, it makes it tough for his family and his business as well to operate like that. So here we see David Askew looking to the inside of Daskalos. We see this overlap between the sports club races and the GT World Challenge.
And you see the damage to the left front corner of that black DXDT Usalco Mercedes. And so the crew will be watching that very, very closely. Lest we forget, talking here about Ziad Gandor being a feisty guy, Martin Barkey partnered Marcelli to the championship. He is a great driver, and as you said, we're looking forward to having him back as well. But a little run right here. Ooh, Alec Udell back into that silver Mercedes, stepping out for just a minute.
Yeah, really twitchy there. So it took Martin Fuentes a little bit of time to lay down those fast laps, did a cool-off lap, and then laid down the last lap flyer to grab that pole position by almost a half a second. A big margin here, but between these two cars we're focused on behind him, Shelby Blackstock, Alec Udell, they were separated by just a tenth of a second, and that is the battle for silver. You see the Wright Motorsports Porsche in pit lane. Obviously some sort of damage after that little tap Brad took on that opening corner.
And they're doing a tire change as well. It might be that he locked up to not get into that spun car any harder than he did, so it may have damaged the tires a little bit. There's only a certain number of tires you're allotted during a race. To change tires this early, that might impact some strategy plays, but boy, because of that incident and just because of some speed, these top 3 find themselves well and truly clear. And guess who sits 4th overall right now? James Sofronis. Yeah, well, he was 4th fastest when you looked at the overall times this morning, so it doesn't surprise me. He's out to make a statement, have a bit of fun here this afternoon, and really showcase what one of those previous generation GT3 cars can do. 27th year of World Challenge racing, over 200 starts. James has more experience than probably the rest of this field put together. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it, talking about the older generation Mercedes here in that TechMed entry. Ooh, nice move by Udell. Gets down possibly to the inside of Blackstock. Blackstock, though, gives him the inside through 19. Does Alec have enough drive off of this corner? Looks like he got a little bit of a run.
He does. He pokes his nose to the inside. Can't quite clear him as Shelby takes over the apex there. Big acceleration run off the corner. This little battle has allowed Martin to spread the gap a little bit behind him.
Well, we were talking about the one step down in terms of Evo for that silver Mercedes. Well, that GT3 Audi that James is driving, it too may be pretty darn quick in a straight line.
Yeah, I mean, typically with the later evolutions of the cars, they went a little bit more high downforce, try to make it a bit more comfortable, particularly for the gentleman drivers who are very much part and parcel of this championship right now. So with that, You typically try and get the car a little bit more grip, and with that you kind of trade off a little bit of the speed down the straightaway, so we'll have to wait and see how that plays out.
Alec continuing to hound Shelby Blackstock. Sequence of corners, 8, 9, and this fast downhill kink, turn 10. Really feel that arrow there, don't you?
You really do. It really works in tremendously well. You see the little undulation there, the bumps in the road. It's been ground down a few times over the years. It just seems we had some really heavy rain winters. Not so much last winter, but the 2 before that, Texas really got socked, so it really took its toll on the racetrack and the surface.
I loved on Jan Halen's Porsche track preview, where he was talking about some of those S's, and he said, you really feel the downforce here. It's such a fun corner. You really relish that, don't you?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, driving this racetrack in a high downforce car, I mean, when you look at the S's, I think it was really designed for the Formula 1 cars and the gobs of downforce that they have. As we now look at the fastest speeds on the straightaway, Shelby Blackstock, the Acura, coming up with a little bit less BOP in terms of performance this weekend, but still very strong in the straightaway. But you see Alec right there with that previous gen Mercedes as well.
Pretty close there, isn't it, for all of those cars? You're only separated by a couple of miles an hour, so at least in terms of horsepower output and straight line speed, BOP is fairly close. It's all part of Race Vision's new, or our new Race Vision powered by AWS, and it is a really cool graphics program that is utilizing data from the cars, goes up to the AWS cloud, then there's components within the cloud that work it over, send it back down, and we get to show it to you on the screen. We've also got fastest speeds through the S's, and there's more in the cart that's going to be coming for us.
Yeah, they're talking about showing us the last of the late breakers at some point in terms of the brake zones into some of these corners throughout the remaining rounds of this championship, so we'll wait and see how that evolves. But yeah, we see that overlap between GT3 and GT2 machinery, so Ryan Gates is keeping Mark Issa right there. Through this next section, through the S's, Mark should be able to stretch the gap a little bit with a high downforce GT3 car. These Porsche GT2 cars have about 700 horsepower to play with, and it's really just trying to keep the reins on this car as you manhandle it through these tight and twisty sections.
Well, as you watch these cars, the difference is going through corners. You can see that GT3 car, you could turn in a little earlier and just roll some speed. You watch the GT2 cars, it's a little bit more brake, get it rotated, straighten it out, and then go to power.
It is. You just want to get it in a straight line and unleash it, particularly coming off this turn 11. First gear in the majority of the GT3 cars through this corner, relatively low speed, not the lowest speed corner on the racetrack, and then just get the wheel straight and plant your right foot and take off. GT3 cars are going to hit about 160 miles an hour as they approach the brake zone for turn 12. GT2 cars about 175.
Let's go back, take a look at the start here. And there you can see Askew way over to the inside, then gets that curb. There's the bump and the
he can basically push Ziad out there, so maybe Ziad will not get a penalty for that. He could say that I was pushed over there and get into Fred and turn him around. It's just a sequence of events there resulting in the cars getting turned.
Yeah, I really don't think Ziad, that's not on him at all here. And Martin Fuentes, it's been a great year for them. Well, let's watch this little moment here. This is Askew recovering in that DXDT Usalco machine. Having a great little scrap here with Ziad Gondor.
David has to be pretty pumped up, having watched his daughter Olivia put on a tremendous performance this morning in the TCR class. Almost grabbed a podium run. He's right in the thick of things, as high up as second. Just a great little racer that she's developed into.
Yeah, very limited experience, but while Dad was out testing cars, she decided to start doing a little bit of testing and driving as well, and they noticed a pretty good aptitude and said, "We need to get her to pursue this." Right now, David is closely pursuing Ziad. We call him Z-Hog from his rallying days. Nickname he picked up.
See, these cars are pretty compliant to run over these red and white curbings, and then you see The odd splash of orange is what we call a sleeping policeman, where there's actually a bit more curbing to deal with to try and protect the racing line somewhat, but nonetheless it seems like all of the engineers and drivers have figured out a way with the setups to run the majority of the curbs around this racetrack now.
You notice a lot of the cars, in some of the corners where those sleeping policemen are, they can straddle. And if you can do that, your ride height's just enough, you can get away with it. And sometimes around here that makes a big difference in terms of lap time. You just have to use the curbs. If other people are, you better.
Yeah, you're shortcutting the circuit to a certain degree, and it's really hard for the stewards to please. So they basically said, just to reiterate, as we said in the open to the show, red and white is all right, so long as you're not beyond that and you do it repeatedly in the race. They're pretty much on top of it in qualifying, because obviously every inch counts in terms of your lap time. In the races, well, if you're not too egregious with it, you probably get away with it for a few times at least. So Fuentes has regrouped here. He had a poor lap and allowed Shelby to get right close to him, and now he's opened up the gap once again at the front.
And meanwhile, Alec Udell has set fast lap of the race in that silver number 33 TechMed Windward Racing Mercedes, a 2-minute 8.845, and as I say that, Fuentes steals it back with a 2:08.5.
Yeah, and just like we saw in qualifying, as the run went on, he seemed to get a little bit stronger. So maybe they've set up this Hublot Ferrari for the longer green flag runs. Again, for these drivers, they're going to be in the cars a minimum of 45 minutes, and then be switching over. And with that switchover, you get a different set of tires, so you can use them up. You're not saving them for anyone else.
And with the GT Sports Club cars running, and that gives them an extra 5 minutes before that window, and they would go into that anyway. Do you have to backpedal any more than you would prior to the GT Sports Club cars coming in, or is it pretty similar?
I think it's pretty similar. I mean, you know, you're only talking about a 5-minute delta there, possibly 15 if you stretch all the way to the 55-minute mark, but they're very different cars, particularly the GT2 cars, so different philosophy there in terms of what you're doing. But here we see a really cool aspect with this new Race Vision powered by AWS. This is the fastest corner speed through turn 4. You see Fuentes demonstrating why he's got the lead and spacing everyone right now by his speed through that corner.
Yeah, that Ferrari has always liked this track. And we're getting a report now that Mark Issa might be getting a drive-through penalty for jumping the start, going too early. And if that's the case, he just has to come down, trundle through pit lane at the speed limit. And it's something on the order of, I think, 46 seconds just to run down pit lane. And that's a bit of a hit, to be sure. But interesting to see a replay of that, because maybe he poked the nose out a little bit sooner than I thought. But it sure looked like that green moved and he went.
Yeah, he did. And the key is if you actually, green is go, so you're allowed to make the pass. So he must have just jumped out before it went green.
And we've been following the interesting opening few laps for David Askew. Ryan, what's the word for pit lane?
Well, it's an interesting development. A newcomer to the team, at least for the weekend. Stefan Pfeiffer is on top of the pit box. He most recently was working with the Pados Racing team in Pirelli GT4 America. Before that, with Effort Racing and with Starworks. And the connection between all three is David's co-driver, Ryan Diol, who went to his old friend and colleague and asked, hey, can you come and help us out this weekend? We need a little bit of assistance on top of the pit box. So Stefan, who's a longtime engineer, really knows his stuff. He's come in. He's been learning on the fly. This team tested as recently as last week at Indianapolis. Stefan was not a part of that, however, but he has been getting up to speed throughout the weekend, and he's been a good asset for this team throughout this whole process here so far at Cota.
I think he is one of the finest talents in terms of setup and engineering wizardry that you can find. I mean, he engineered Ian James to a championship last year.
Yeah, and a fun guy.
Yeah,
he's got
great
a really
guy.
Positive attitude. Typically has a big smile on his face unless you've really ticked him off.
Yeah.
So he's just one of those stalwarts of our sport that you just love to have in your camp.
And I misspoke. The drive-through time down pit lane is 36 seconds, not 46. It's more about 40 when you the slow down to make the turn in and that sort of thing. So Issa's going to drop back, but he's augured his way through the pack before and come back up after that Road American, his first race, qualified on pole, but dropped back to, I think, third, and was able to come back through and contend for the win, finishing a very close second.
See that really unique approach to turn 11 as Ziad kind of goes in that really shallow angle of attack, which means when you're coming off, same thing here, you just still got a lot of steering input in the car when you're coming off the corner. That delays your ability to get back to power at the same time. It's not so bad when the tires are good, but as the tire wear starts to be more of a factor, you get a little bit of tire degradation. That will really slow him down.
He's doing enough thus far to keep it in front of David Askew. And of course, these cars a little bit sensitive on the aero, so if you're running close to the car in front of you in that aero wash, if you will, you do lose a little bit of the efficiency of the aero on the nose of the car. And that can sometimes just make that overtake a little bit tougher to accomplish.
Yeah, and right there you could probably see the effect there with David coming through turn 19. He's just taking the air off those front dive planes that's literally pushing the nose into the ground and gripping the front tires. So typically going to create a bit of understeer, and if you continually run like that, that's going to lead into the front tires going off a little bit and grinding them away, essentially. So you've got to be careful with that one. That's why when you catch something, you want to try and make the move as quickly as you can, but it's not easy around this circuit, even though it's wide open.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, you know, we've talked about it before, the way that into 1, into 11, how the road, it's parallel, and then suddenly as you approach that apex, it just opens up all the way to the apex, and it's so inviting to just get down there and stay snug, but then you find yourself sometimes in a bit of a pickle on the exit.
Yes, you certainly can. So here we see David trying to work Ziad over here a little bit. Ziad using all of that curving to the inside through 8 and 9. All totally okay, unless you get in the dirt, then the steers will definitely take a look at that. But he opens up a little bit of gap there, and then he dives for that apex super early. David will just swing out wide, and he should be able to get on the power and straighten his hands right there, so he should have better acceleration off that corner.
This is an impressive, I think, performance for Ziad, because his experience has all pretty much been in various Ferrari GT machines. So to hop in the Acura, yes, it's a GT3 machine, and there are certainly similarities, but it's not going to be the same as the types of cars he's got a lot of experience in here, and a very nice job.
Yeah, and the more miles he puts under his belt, I'm not sure what the plan is for the rest of the season, if they'll indeed compete at Indianapolis as well, as David is really getting feisty now, trying to crack the door open there in terms of making some space.
It was interesting there, that run in through 14 to 15, Ziad's line through there protecting to the inside. Oftentimes you see at the exit then, as you get to 15, you just float out way wide, you can't control it. Oh, look at David's swing here. He got a big head of steam built up. It's going to be tough to defend on this one, and he's inside. That was pretty.
That was really nice. Just great rhythm to that move, and set it up nicely. But Ziad's on the power early. It's going to be a drag race up the hill.
Boy, what a nice counterpunch move. And what I was marveling at was I thought he was going to overrun the exit of 15 big time, and he just calmly slowed it down, turned, and went right where Askew was probably going to try and make some move here. It's fascinating, these different lines. Look at David that
continues.
time. Oh,
that was
beautiful.
Sweet. And that's what we're talking about in terms of the development of a driver. Seeing David start to make moves like that really is testimony to the work that he's put in with he and his teammate Ryan Diol and the whole DXDT team to give him the mileage, and now the race is under his belt to feel confident to make those moves.
That's a wealth of data to be drawing on, to have Ryan Diol in your headset, in your ears, talking to you and everything. And boy, did he execute two beautiful moves there. One Ziad countered nicely, and the second one Ziad couldn't counter at all. This feisty little battle for second place. Shelby's doing a nice job, and Alec is hanging right with him, though.
Yeah, they're separated by mere hundreds in terms of their fastest laps of the day. Fuentes put that monster lap in to gap them, and his fast lap is about 2/10 clear, but continue to push hard here. Martin and Rodrigo Baptista, we know the pace he's got. We've seen it before in GT4 competition here in this country, and certainly recently with the K-Pac squad running Bentleys as well. But the lap he put together was one of those monster laps. Mid-4.
Yeah.
2:04.5 is what he put together with that Ferrari. And you couldn't have two more distinctly different personalities driving that Hublot Ferrari, and the effervescent Martin Fuentes and the almost introverted Rodrigo, even though he's starting to get a bit more confidence and come out of his shell a little bit, which is nice to see.
Well, if you want to even be noticed, Martin, you better be able to make some bit of a splash. And but you know, when you get to know Rodrigo a little bit, he's got a very wry, delightful sense of humor. It just takes a little bit for it to come out here.
Yeah, it really reminds me a bit of Juan Pablo Montoya when he first burst on the scene over here. Didn't really say a lot, and now he can't shut him up. So maybe Rodrigo will go in the same direction.
Exactly, and it's a pretty fair compliment to pay to anybody to compare him to Juan Pablo. I'll tell you, when Rodrigo showed up and running the GT4 car for Flying Lizard, that Porsche, he did some pretty marvelous stuff with it. So this guy is really up on the wheel here. Sofronis, a very solid 4th overall, with Daskalos 5th overall here. And James is throwing down some laps. I mean, 2:11.3 for a race lap here. That's impressive.
Yeah, and his best is a 2:09.4, so he's less than a second off the fastest lap of the race, and again, in not current machinery. So, as you expect, when James Sofronis shows up, he's ready to play.
He is, and Ryan Gates has just been a joy to have in the paddock this year, and a joy to watch on the track. Comes from the time attack background, which is basically like extended qualifying sessions. And he drives the qualifying session very much like a time attack program, but is relishing the challenge in this scenario of actual road racing, having to string laps together. And he thus far in the GT2 overall category is undefeated, and I believe has every pole and fast lap as well. And got another one here, so he leads his category here very stoutly. And he's fun to watch drive these cars.
Yeah, he was definitely hanging out in qualifying earlier this morning, was sideways through the S's and hung on to it. So he's getting more and more comfortable with this machine. He has a very unique sort of like direction that he goes in those qualifying runs. Does a lap, cools it way down, goes again. So I think that comes from his time attack background. But up front, Fuentes is definitely not gapping this field by a lot. I mean, he's a little bit quicker on that last lap, but it stays there right about a second back to Shelby Blackstone.
One last thing on Gates, the man knows how to celebrate a win. He gets down on his knee and proposes.
Yes.
So that's, they are a delight to have in this paddock. And yeah, you're right, Martin continues to maintain it, but he's not drawn away. Let's get, again, Race Vision powered by AWS update. Fastest speed on the straights for the Pro-Am cars. And it's Gondor and Fuentes even at the top.
That's pretty tight, so it's really down a really solid balance of performance for BOP in terms of the weight and power that's delivered to each car each weekend. I think the technical staff done a nice job. You can't get a lot closer than that.
And for Fred Poordad, it's unfortunate. This is his home track, and he comes here and something happens. In March, got here damp, well, really almost wet qualifying. Car got away from him coming out of turn 20. As he started his fast lap, and he got the wall, and now he gets caught up in that schmozzle at the very start and has to fight his way up through the back. And I think they did go down a lap trying to figure out and repair whatever the damage might have been to that Wright Motorsport Porsche. And that's going to take, we really thought that that pairing of Poordad and Jan Halen was going to be a serious player in the Pro-Am class here.
Yeah, and I think fortunately they did just stay on the lead lap, Greg. So if there was a caution and the pack was suddenly compacted again, that would give Jan Halen a great opportunity, because in the second round of qualifying, which set the grid for tomorrow, he was only 2/10 off the Hublot Ferrari and Rodrigo Baptista behind the wheel. So if we get a reset of any kind, and it's we haven't seen a lot this year, and particularly at this circuit with such wide runoff areas, it's not likely, but if we should, they're still in the game. That is critical for the Wright Motorsports team to keep that car on the lead lap.
Well, John Wright and that team, they know the strategy. They know what you have to do to keep your hand in it and not take yourself out of an incident. There's nothing you can do about on-track incidents that you're caught up in that aren't of your doing, but you don't want to compound it, and you're not a team prone to that type of condition.
No, and I think the key is a lot of these teams have endurance race, sports car racing backgrounds as well, and experience, so you know they're going to be up to the task if the car does come in the pit lane unexpectedly. And then the key is going to be executing during that minimum pit stop delta. Looking at the speed through the S's again, Fuentes showing great pace through there.
Yeah, that's something. He's opened that margin up again. He just reset fast lap, I think, at a 2:08.527. He had a 2:08 high 208.5. Now he gets to a low 208.5, and he is really flying. But I think what's doubly impressive here is the fact that he's the Am and a Pro-Am combination here, and is leading overall.
Yeah, but as we've seen over the years, even when some of the Ferrari factory pilots were in these races, he's been given the likes of Tony Vilander a run on occasion. So there's no dust on him. He can definitely pedal one of those Ferraris. So much success, multi-time champion now.
Here's a look at how now David Askew was able to take that black EXDT Mercedes around Ziad Gandour, Cal.
Yeah, big brake zone up there in turn one. You can see the different lines, how you can tackle this, and then just gets a big run and just straight lines it down to the apex for turn two and clears him. That was nice.
It was. You can hear that the rumble of that V8 as he picked up the throttle and made it pay with a great line. And now for Ziad, you know, he was able to hold on to him, but he could never shake him. A couple of times Askew got alongside him, so Ziad knew that David was a little quicker. Does he now, the smart move to me would be to, why is he quicker? Why is he staying with me? What's he doing differently than I was? And if he watches Dave now with those more open lines into the corners, learning opportunity?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when you see someone ahead of you doing something dramatically different, you're going to want to try it. But I see him there when he gets into the ABS suddenly and makes him want to dive for that apex. It's almost like a little safety net for him. So I think if he can just be a bit more patient with his marks and that turn in to the corner, he should find some pace.
Look again at James Safronis leading overall. And then number 4, GMG. It's Global Motorsports Group. Thermal Club, Mobile One, Audi, and you talked about his massive experience in World Challenge. And in many ways, I mean, I remember announcing him when it was Greek Brothers Racing, and he and his brother had, I think it was a Chuck Hemmingson Oldsmobile that they started, and then they moved to a little BMW and were racing and doing whatever they could. And James parlayed that. He was selling medical equipment, and then decided to try and focus on building this Global Motorsports Group team and speed shop and prep shop and everything. It's turned into, I think Southern California's one of the absolute best aftermarket products for a variety of German manufacturers, and I believe they also do work with Lamborghini. So he's one of those that's kind of a Roger Penske type of deal where you took racing and parlayed it into a very successful business and career.
Yeah, and everything he does is top notch. The presentation of the whole squad is immense. And he admits that his racing now takes a back seat. It's customer racing first. If there's an opportunity to compete on a weekend and it makes sense and it's not compromising anything, then he'll be out there. But he really enjoys it, and he just found his passion. What a great way to have one career that was very successful, and then you fall in love with motor racing, and he's made it successful both on and off the racetrack with GMG.
Yeah, it's pretty special. And then this guy, Jason Daskalos, for many years ran then Pirelli World Challenge in his Daskalos Racing Vipers, and impressed Nick Short and the CPR team, or the CRP team, and did a season with them running that rocket quick Nissan.
Yeah, so great to see him back, and I think that's the great thing about this sports club racing, is they're really given, for some people it's a bucket list. They may not have ever done any racing like this. For others, it's a return. They went on to complete very successful careers. Now they're a little bit older, coming back and returning as the series visits some great venues here in North America.
Now there's a look at Ryan Gates in the GT2 Porsche. We've been talking about the 311 RS Motorsports entry, and Minneapolis, Minnesota-based team, but the program, a lot of help from Bob Sanderson and Goldcrest Motorsports and working with that program, and Ryan's doing just a great job. But the whole concept of GT Sports Club is, it's not just the on-track activity, it's the whole experience. And were it not for this COVID scenario here, the idea is there's a great hospitality program, so you bring your families, they're looked after, all kinds of things that you could do. You get out on the track and run, then you come and there's dinners at night and celebrations and the like. It's the experience and an opportunity for a true bronze level driver to come out and get some exposure in a pro race setting. And you know, obviously the COVID pandemic has kind of nulled out that hospitality program, but when things come around again, I think it's going to be a really, really popular thing.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be taken in a more relaxed environment, not as cutthroat as we see in the GT World Challenge class, of course. But as you say, I think it's been great to see, you know, a solid group of cars every single weekend. And I think as we get out of the COVID restrictions, hopefully moving forward into the 2021 season, I think that will allow other competitors to embrace the class and either show back up or certainly come for the first time.
Well, Fronis is very, very high still, he said, on the potential for this. He's got a huge amount of interest and just needs things to happen. Have a look here. David Askew really hustling that DXDT car.
Just got a little out of sync through there, and that's what those S's will do to you. If you don't correct it early enough, suddenly you just get behind, and quick spin there. So time to regroup. Key is the car did not get hit or any major damage. I'm sure the tires are not in the healthiest of states, but just try and continue here, get to that 45-minute mark, another 15 minutes to go, and he can make that pit stop and turn it over to Ryan Diol. And then ideally to get in the frame really for a solid run, they just need a reset. They need a caution somehow to get them back in the game. And
that was what happened with him there. You talked about getting behind. It's a cliche that might be overused, but it is so aptly descriptive. That was just get behind in your steering.
Yep, just got too far behind, and you're loading the car, and as the tires are getting a little bit more worn through the course of this green flag run, you just don't have the grip to get away with it and almost bully the car back on line. So a lot of weight transfer there, and you're transitioning left and right through those high-speed S's all of the time.
And even for the most experienced drivers, it's just not a normal reaction at all to just get out of it, slow way down, gather it up again. And sometimes that's just what you have to do. It's sort of like overcharging a corner. You have to have that discipline sometimes to believe in the concept of slower in, faster out.
Yeah, it's just, but you got to do it subtly, Greg.
Yes.
You know, you just suddenly give it the big lift, you can control the weight forward. So just recognize I'm a little bit offline here, just giving up that mile or two an hour just into the next corner and just getting it all back under control. And he just got it a little bit wrong there, and that'll go in the old memory bank, and he'll remember that one.
Absolutely. And Alec Udell has been staying within half a second of Shelby Blackstock, but Shelby here, the margin from Fuentes to Udell hasn't changed, but it looks like Shelby's on this lap has just upped the ante a little bit. He's driven just a smidge away from Alec. He's closed in on Martin. Take a look at the gaps here.
And then Martin responds with a new fastest lap. So on the previous lap, Blackstock and Udell almost matched their personal bests. And as soon as Martin saw that Acura NSX get a little bit larger in his mirrors, he just responded and say, "I've got this under control, guys." Well, let's not forget, Fuentes leads overall and in Pro-Am, but the nearest Pro-Am competitor is Ziad Gandor back in 6th. So Martinez has a huge lead in class right now that he doesn't want to throw away.
So you need to big picture things just a little bit, but part of the game here too is, you know, you believe in your team, you know that this team can execute these pit stops and not lose time, but things do happen. You have a tire that bounces away, you have a seat belt that falls in the wrong spot, and suddenly you're in the pits for 2 seconds, 3 seconds longer than that window. If you've got that margin built up on track, which he has handily right now, that can protect you should something happen in the stop.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of buffer is obviously going to help you if you do have some little fumble in pit lane, and it's so easy for it to go wrong. There's not a lot of time to play with that minimum stop time of 77 seconds. A lot of work has to be done there. As you mentioned earlier, it costs you 36 seconds just driving down pit lane. So with the remainder of that time, 41 seconds, you got to get a lot of work done for tire change, driver change. Not impossible to be sitting there and just be in time out of your pit box, but if it goes wrong in any way, you'll suddenly see those precious tenths of a second and seconds go away from you.
You just saw, you mentioned it, that Martin had reset fast lap. That means he currently has the CrowdStrike fastest lap award, but if it changes, it goes to whoever at the end of the race has that fastest lap. So it's a nice prestigious award. You always like to get fast race lap, obviously.
Yeah, and with race one, it's the lower graded driver. Admittedly, some of these are very equal. Certainly the silver combinations of Blackstock and Hinman, and then Alec Udell and Russell Ward. So But when you look at the Pro-Am combinations, you got to feel that the second drivers will be a little bit quicker. So I think that crowd strike fast lap will probably go in a different direction. But maybe, who knows, still stay with the same car.
Yep.
As Rodrigo had amazing pace here this morning.
Oh, he sure did in that qualifying session. It's a great look at that 133 feet in climb, and it doesn't start at the exit of 20. You're actually dipping down almost a little bit. You get right about to pit out on that pit straight, and then it just climbs upward, and it's really tough to grasp it from a TV camera. Every once in a while you get that shot when you're looking at the car's tails away out of the last turn, and you just see this. It almost looks, I can't remember the name of the movie, but where it would fold stuff back on itself. It almost looks like that, because it's just this wall of pavement that runs up, and there you get a feel when you see that image of just how steep that climb is.
Yeah, this is a rush of a racetrack when you're driving at the speeds that these guys are going at. I mean, the TV camera angles don't really do it justice in terms of the subtleties of the elevation change, but there's always something going on here, and you're always working, trying to find a new angle, literally, to get through some of these corners. You're learning from the car in front. As your tire wear changes, you may attack the course a little bit differently as well.
Boy, every time Shelby gets close to Martin, he just finds a way to just ease away just a little bit. And this track has three very distinctly different sectors, but you look at it, you know, sector 2, it starts with some of the twistiest parts of the S's, but then it includes a massive high-speed blast. So each of the sectors has its, you know, sort of a blend, doesn't it?
It does, and then the final sector, boy, it's all very twisty and technical, and all about the mechanical grip of the car, and also the balance, the ability to change direction quickly. This is a beautiful corner here, this triple right-hander. 16, 17, 18, beautiful flowing rhythm. I love how you exit turn 18, just enough time to get over to the right-hand side of the road and blast through 19 for the final couple of turns. Slowing things back down here, you have to really be patient through that final corner to set up the acceleration burst up this front straightaway.
And Martin now has opened that margin up almost to a second and a half again, but Udell sets his personal best lap here at a 2:08.7. Just continues to relentlessly hound Shelby Blackstock. Sifronis continuing to lead overall in the GT Sports Club category as we are closing in just 3 minutes till the checkered flag for these guys. He leads over Daskalos, Jason Daskalos. And Daskalos, as always, having a really good run in the vintage 423 Guzman Construction Audi from Daskalos Racing. And then next up is Issa. He's got a couple of cars between himself and Daskalos, though. Issa driving the Lugo Hotels TR3 racing machine. And then there's Ryan Gates, who's leading the GT2 category. It's called GT2 overall in that 311 RS Motorsports Porsche.
Yeah, so the Sifronis Daskalos gap is right around 10 seconds right now, 9.9. So it's like James had about half a second a lapse kind of delta between he and Jason, who Jason hasn't given up, though continues to chase. But we're getting pretty close here. Only a couple of minutes away from the checkered flag for the GT Sports Club races.
2 minutes to go. And Gates drops that hammer. That Porsche just launches. Here's where that climb is. Inception, by the way. Just popped into my mind.
Maybe.
Yes. Starring, of course.
Here we go. This is where you gotta tighten the old seat belts down and hang on to this beast. James had a really clean run here. He's got to be loving life right now to be at this stage of his racing career and be able to come out and always put out beautiful machinery, and always seems to be at the sharp end. As we mentioned, he won the class in GT World Challenge Pro-Am division here with Jerome Bleekemolen earlier this year, and had the overall pole for one of the races. So he can still get it done.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, as he takes it a little bit more, it's like a golfer who never goes to the golf range. You're kind of surprised when you show up and you put a nice round together. Do you know what I mean? I think that's what James Sifronis has right now. He's not dedicated to being behind the wheel like he used to. And it's kind of nice to come out and still be right there.
Absolutely. And that qualifying when he took the overall pole was in wet conditions too, which you know, that, as they say, is the equalizer, and he had him covered at that point. So, and he's just been such a staunch supporter of the series. And I mean, for a while there, they actually got permission. They had a line that was called WC. I'm trying to remember that it was WC inspired, World Challenge inspired parts line for cars that they worked and developed parts. He's just been connected to this championship in many ways for most of it. Actually, 27 years he's been running, and we're in our 31st year essentially of this championship.
Wow, these guys will just not disappear from one another.
Oh.
So Fuentes continues to lead overall, but the battle for the silver class win is right there. So it's going to come down to the pit stop. We'll see how the Racer's Edge can execute, and maybe they can keep Hinman in the lead when he takes over the reins of this 93 red and black Acura. And then Alec Udell running with this Winward group. First time racing this GT3 Mercedes, so he's really done a tremendous job. He's running some other races in GT4 machinery, but first opportunity here in GT3, I believe.
And hasn't had a ton of time behind the wheel of this particular GT3 Mercedes, so he's very much been learning on the fly. But here's one quick study.
Yeah, he's obviously got GT3 machinery, but experience.
Yes, yes.
But certainly this Mercedes, I believe, is new to him. So great to see him get up on the reins really quickly. He's done a great job, and he's keeping it close. And this is really the critical factor now as we get into these next 13 to 18 minutes. See the pit stops happening.
I think we talked about it during the qualifying show, but he all right, Safronis is coming around. This should be it. Watch for him as he comes out of turn 20. Checker flag flies, and James Safronis on debut in GT Sports Club America gets the win. There's Jason Daskalos finishing second. So GMG and Daskalos Motorsports go 1-2 overall. James also runs in what's called the titanium class for drivers 50 to 59. Marquisa sits third, and he should bring that home in the overall category. And GT3, oh, and a spin by Askew right before the pit windows open. So that's going to drop him back behind Gondor.
Busy stint for David.
Yeah,
now recovers, and now you can see that Fred Pordat is going to be right on his tail as he's made a nice recovery. He haven't got turned around in that first corner and had to come down pit lane and get a tire changed out.
And here comes Ryan Gates. And this would be his 7th win. He is really putting it together from his 7th pole. And there it is, 311 RS Motorsports and Ryan Gates. That beautiful, pristine white Porsche GT2 earns yet another one here. Just a fabulous run. That's what happened with George, or David, excuse me.
Yeah, just looked to be a little bit wide there on the entry to turn 16, and again, tires not at their prime. Late in the stint, just loses it a little bit. So looks like the car may have been a bit of a handful for him here today. He's been driving really hard, but now he's feeling the pressure there from Fred Pordat right behind, and this is a battle for class position with Fred now running in the category with his new teammate for this weekend, Jan Halen. The reason he has a change of teammate as he now looks for a move down into turn 11 is that his regular teammate, young Max Root, the teenager, is making his debut at Le Mans this weekend.
Yeah, what a fabulous opportunity and recognition for Max and his really remarkable talents here. And Fred Pordat has become sort of a mentor for him, and really is proud of what Max has been able to do and what he's doing, as you said, this very weekend. And I wonder if I ask you again, take a look at that left front corner of that car. You can see there's bodywork damage there, and if something did get into that splitter and arrow a little bit, and that car's just not quite producing the downforce he's used to or expecting in it, that could certainly affect things.
Yeah, For sure. Anything with these cars, if it's a little bit off, sometimes you can be surprised. Suddenly it gives you a little bit of handling that you never had before, but typically is going to damage the car, damage the handling, and make it a bit of a handful. So this is a brand new race car that they debuted at Road America. Just really felt they couldn't understand why they couldn't quite match the pace of the 04 CrowdStrike machine that runs under the same awning. And so David made the decision to buy a new chassis, and by all accounts, Ryan Diol, his teammate, was very happy with the performance of the car at Road America.
Yeah, they both said it just, for some reason, it just feels more comfortable for them to be able to drive, suits their styles a little bit better even. And yeah, I mean, on debut at Road America, you could just see it. It was just clicking, they were fast. Diol got an overall pole. Everything came good for him.
So tight there to the 45-minute mark, too early for the leaders to hit pit lane. Typically we see the racer's edge group come in early, so let's see what they do. They've got a real battle here for the silver class position, so they've got to try and make the right decision here with the strategy, but we know how quick Hinman is, so it's really about the undercut versus the overcut, but you are allowed these tire warmers and blankets, yes. So typically there's not the big delta on the outlap compared to people staying out there for the overcut, as we've seen in seasons past.
I mean, it's radically trimmed, it hasn't it? From a lap and a half, sometimes it would take the tires to come up to tempered pressure, to now it can be a matter of a third of a lap. Yeah, I mean, they're not at operating temperatures, but you're not really just trying to generate any load and energy into the tires, so they come up pretty quickly. But here we can see Fuentes is really feeling the heat now. That gap is basically down to 0 here as Shelby Blackstone's closed in on him. Anything that's left in these tires, you know these drivers are going to use it up, because there's going to be a fresh threat of Pirelli P0s going on during this pit stop. And you would certainly, well, I guess with the way that Martin's driving and he's got clear track, I don't know, do you pull him in at this stage? And they're obviously looking at the data and the programming you talked about that can tell them where they're going to come out. You know, what's the likelihood they're going to come out with clear track or in some sort of traffic or whatever? I'd pull him in, because if there's a yellow, once this pit window is open, it could really be to your advantage to have that pit stop being taken care of. And certainly Baptista is radically quick, so that would make a certain amount of sense here. And for Alec Udell, I mean, both he and Russell are silver level drivers, and we've seen some pretty good speed from Russell this year. He's really trying to work Blackstock over here now. Yeah, he is. If I was John Marocchi, I'd probably pit Shelby. We'll see what they do. Here we go. There goes Fuentes. There goes Shelby. Look at you. Well, it seems to have been there. I mean, there's no magic to it. I mean, right. They seem to have been playing it this way all season long, and I think now Alec Udell's going to try and get hammer time down and try and really execute some good laps here whilst the Acura NSX is on pit lane, but you know that Hinman's going to be immediately up on the wheel with relatively warm Pirelli P0s as well. As will Baptista. But keep in mind, as you point out, you were talking about the silver class battle. And what a run by Martin. Pro-Am driver, AM component of the Pro-Am driver, from the overall pole, leading all the way to the driver change. That's impressive stuff. Yeah, he's just magic behind the wheel of one of these Ferraris. Continues to impress, doesn't matter what the level of competition is. He's always right there in terms of pace. Pretty relaxed here with this driver change going on. Nice clean stop for the Hublot Ferrari. This is always a good sign when they're waiting to release their driver. Yep. Well, when the car drops and you sit for a minute, that means the crew's done a heck of a job. There was Baptista. There goes Trent. Yeah, that's pretty much how they came in. Let's see what they are when they cross the stripe here. 77 seconds, so yeah. Number one car just half a second outside, and the 93 1.3 seconds outside that minimum, so good clean stops there. And as you said, this is an absolute go time for Alec Udell. Yeah, this is critical. If he got a really good clean lap and a good hard lap here, they'd like to pit him. I won't keep him out much longer because those tires are gradually going to fade a little bit, and he won't have the lap time to match what Hinman and company will be able to do. So I'd say 1 or 2 laps max, and then get him in, and then the key is executing the pit stop similar to the
competitors.
He is.
He's pushing.
He sure is. See those hands dancing on the wheel. He's staying out.
Yeah, I think any more than 2 would be a mistake, but we'll see what they do.
All right, rolling into the throttle. Let's see what kind of a time he puts up on that lap. 2:08.855.
That's good. That's right near his best. So
that is.
There's still good life there. So if he can continue to run laps like that, they might keep running him. I'm surprised he's able to see those sort of lap times.
Yeah, I mean, that's less than 4/10 off of Fuente's fastest lap.
Yeah, only 2/10 off of Alex's personal best, so that's really strong.
That's good indeed.
So the key is going to be Hinman's outlap, his first flyer, to see how he compares with that. I've got a feeling you're going to be seeing low 7s potentially from this group right now.
Just saw Hinman really sawing at the wheel, fighting the car through 17 and 18.
Trying to get it to come to life, but it's like Baptista has gapped him a little bit on this outlap, certainly.
In comes Ziad Gandour. Kyle Marcelli awaits. Keep an eye on these stops. Wow. Poor Dad to Halen, 77.1 seconds.
Nice job, John Wright and company. Keeps them in the game, but they need a reset. They need a yellow. There's just Fred getting turned around in the pit stop, just too far out of the hunt. So yeah, just misses his marks a little bit, but no drama. Everything looks to be clean so far. This has really just been a great transition for John Meraki and the Racers Edge crew from stalwarts in GTS, then GT4 competition, now into GT3. They made that step up immediately, almost seamless transition, immediate success it seemed.
Yeah, it was like they were destined to do it almost. And I think part of it is, oh, a little problem.
No, this is not
good at all.
Good. With the refueling situation. Not sure if it wasn't flowing or...
Yeah, that was unusual.
He had overshot his mark a little bit. They couldn't reach it.
Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
So they just decided to do the tires and then back it up and fuel.
Oh, that's going to cost them big time.
All right, for Alec Udell, looking at... Well, last lap was a 2:08.859 to 855. Talk about consistent speed.
Yeah.
Well,
he is going to be looking at these first flying laps for Baptista and Hinman coming up shortly, and that's really the telltale, and for the team as well, for the Women's Racing Group to really analyze are those guys on fresh tires. And look at that, Baptista a 6.7 and a 7 flat for Hinman. So they got to get Alec Udell in, otherwise they're going to be losing time and losing track position.
Well, I'm sure that the Windward team is monitoring that. They'll get that memo. Meanwhile, let's get down to Ryan Marine for an update on Racer's Edge.
Yeah, your speculation was right. Gandour just slightly overshot his marks here in the pits, and as a consequence, they couldn't get the fuel rig all the way engaged. They were aware of that from the beginning, and they elected to do it the way that they did, just for safety purposes and to make sure that they weren't running afoul of any rules. So definitely a big hit, unfortunate, but that's part of the learning process, and Ziad had not done any testing in this car prior to this weekend, so you have to expect there are going to be some learning moments along the way.
Well, that makes what he's done, his drive, I think, all the more impressive, to know that he didn't get any testing until they got here at the track. And you know, one of the sessions I know was done in the wet, certainly in the damp, and indeed, here we go, Udell in, so this is going to be a mega important stop.
Yeah, they need a really good clean one here. Russell Ward's going to jump on board. Nice run by Alec Udell as we would expect. So no surprise, but still very impressive. And now the key is they have to be right on the number, within a few tenths here to have any shot of maintaining that track position. And what you may see if they do execute a good pit stop is this car come out and then immediately be under attack from Hinman, but it's going to be close.
Once again, the key is, ooh, little hang up there, looks like on that left rear. Yeah, that's taking a little too long. But how much time do they have, and where are they staged?
Yeah, if the car leaves immediately, typically it means they're behind.
Yeah. And that's going to be frustrating, because all that hard work that Alec put in with clear track.
Yeah.
He's coming up on it here. Yep, he's definitely going to be long.
Yeah. Ideally, he should
Well,
be
there they go.
out.
There go those two cars. That's unfortunate. Well,
So
we'll see.
basically left 6 seconds on the table. It was going to be close. I really felt they should have pitted almost immediately, because once we saw the lap times that were being achieved by those drivers on their out laps, even though Alec was doing a great job in terms of matching his previous best almost by within a couple of tenths, just those fresh Pirelli P0s are too hard to match, and the undercut definitely worked today.
So now we'll see what Russell Ward is going to be able to do in terms of some pace and trying to get after things here. This is going to be a great battle, isn't it, between Baptiste and Hinman?
Yeah, it's not for class, but you know Hinman and a driver's ego. I'm not saying that Trent has a big one, but every driver does. And even though you may have the class lead under control, you don't like seeing anyone in front of you at the checkered flag. And he's had so many overall wins this year. You know he's going to want to chase after another one, but he's got a pretty fast Ferrari right in front of him.
And prior to getting the opportunity to run with this program this year, Baptiste made the point. He said, you know, yeah, it's different than what I've been driving for the last couple of years, but I have raced a Ferrari.
Yeah,
and
raced one at Le Mans.
Exactly. So he said it's a platform I'm not just familiar with, I like it. And I mean, for instance, it sure showed in that qualifying session this morning.
Yeah, it really did. But I tell you what, Hinman is not letting him get away. And last lap, he was just a sniff quicker than Baptiste. So Baptiste laid down that flight when he first got out there on fresh tires at a 206.7. But the last lap, Hinman was just a sniff quicker. Gap at the line last time was 2.37. We'll see what it is this time. 2.7. So Baptiste increases that margin.
Yeah, that's a heck of a run. 3/10 quicker than Hinman on that lap. So really, really solid. You know, we've talked about Max Root going to Le Mans. Of course, that's unfolding this weekend, but a couple of major endurance races in the SRO calendar coming up in 2 weeks. Season finale for GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, but also the Indy 8 Hours, replacing the California 8 Hours, second round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. So that is a huge event that is going to be sharing that weekend. And with fans, we just got word that's the best news of all. It's going to be a mega weekend. You've got GT World Challenge, you've got all of the SRO Motorsports America categories racing. You've got the 8 hour and you've got Indy cars.
Double header for IndyCar.
All on the same weekend. So that's going to be absolutely massive. And then, of course, let's not forget October 22nd through the 25th, round 3 of the Intercontinental GT Challenge, the Total 24 Hours of Spa, which is a massive event on the endurance calendar as well. So there's an awful lot of great GT racing yet to come.
Yeah, lots to look forward to, even though we're relatively late in the season. Still some brilliant events to go to, great venues. It'd be great to be on the grounds at Indianapolis and see all of the work that Roger Penske, since his ownership, has put together. Hearing great things, so it'll be fun to be there.
Keep your eyes tuned to the SRO websites, because the 2021 calendar announcements, including for GT World Challenge America, expected within the next couple of weeks as well. So lots to look forward to, and I can't wait to get to Indy. That's going to be something.
And I think Baptiste is looking forward again to Indy as well, and with it possibly a monster lead in this championship with their nearest competitors, and in fact the leaders coming in this weekend not taken part in this week's activities, unfortunately, due to some sad news from George Kurtz and the family that he had to get back home. But our best wishes are with everyone there, and hopefully we'll hear some good, positive news here soon.
Here's a look at Jan Halen, who was fastest in both of the official practice sessions in the Hopkins Investments Equitable Wright Motorsports Porsche. And he's turning some pretty quick laps. I've been watching it. He's in the mid-207s as well. Marcelli just turned a 207.4. He's got a lot of ground to make up at this stage, but and it looks like Russell Ward had a lap that was in the 230 range, and he suddenly has dropped all the way back. So he's had a little bit of
out lap, I think.
You think it was his out lap? Okay. Just took time a bit to catch up to it, or me to catch up to timing. Got it. Meanwhile, let's get down to Ryan Marine. He was standing by with our GT Sports Club winner.
That's right, the race within the race. GT Sports Club, our overall winner, James Sofronis. James, a great opportunity to get out there and really display the kind of performance that these older generation GT3 cars have. You were out there mixing it up with some of the new gen guys in GT World Challenge America.
Well, it was a lot of fun. I mean, the Audi R8 Ultra still has lots of legs and life left into it. And the GMG Racing guys did a great job prepping the car. So I knew I could push hard. And if I didn't get hit on the start, I think I could have stayed with the top 3. And then eventually I realized it wasn't worth pushing, and it was more about just bringing home the win and showcasing that this class has a lot of future, because there's so many of these GT3 cars here in the States, and we have half a dozen in our shop. And I wanted to do this race to promote the class, and in doing so, show how much fun it is. 40-minute sprint races, 2 of them a weekend, and basically a lot of fun with bronze-type drivers. And so for me, it was just more about showcasing it, having fun, and really showing how good these cars are and how fast they still are.
Yeah, it definitely looked like you were having a lot of fun out there. I know you got a jet to get home, and say happy birthday to somebody.
Yeah, happy birthday, Nargis. Coming home to you soon. Love you.
Congratulations.
All right, thanks.
Bad news for James is just got a bulletin from SRO. He's now platinum rated moving forward.
Exactly. Exactly. Happy birthday. Ooh, well, look at that Ferrari. It bounces, it pogos a little bit, but it just maintains that platform, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And got an interesting comment from Sebastian Bourdais this week, who's driving a Ferrari at Le Mans. He said the Ferrari GT car is very much like a GT car, has a lot more body roll in it than he expected. So he's adjusting to that over in Le Mans this weekend, but you can see it rolls a bit more than some of the other platforms we're observing here this weekend.
It does. It still obviously gets some really great speed, and you watch that, and I think one of the strengths of the Mercedes, we've talked about it now for a couple of years, Cal, is the Mercedes can get up in the curbs and be pretty aggressive on it, and you don't see that body roll. It just really absorbs things really well, but certainly the Ferrari is awfully fast, and it's just different horses for horses, I guess.
It is, and I tell you what, this overall win isn't over. It's really going to come down to the long green flag run, pace, any tire deck issues, any imbalance in the race car, because Hinman is hanging tough. That mark is still right at 2.1 seconds, and they pretty much matched down to a couple of hundredths of a second on that previous lap. So Hinman is definitely keeping Baptista honest. And it's all about who set the car up for a little bit later in the run. Still a long way to go in this.
Ward still hanging on to thirds overall, second in silver. And Jan Halen, obviously with developments for Askew and Diol, and then the problems with Gondor and having a couple of moments out there. Halen and Hordat sit second in Pro-Am.
Yeah,
it's a long ways back. And
long ways back, but as we said, if there was a reset, you could have a real
oh man,
barn burner, I tell you.
Well, time for an update from Race Vision, powered by AWS. This fastest corner speed at the S's.
Wow. Yeah, Halen.
Boy, he's just attacking there, isn't he?
He really is. So Not sure if any of these other guys hit a little bit of traffic on that comparison lap, but nonetheless, Jan Heylen has been very impressive here this weekend, and the ability for that Porsche, when we focus on him a little bit later in this race, you watch some of the lines he's able to run, particularly through turn 19, how he eats up that inside curve is immense.
He's coming off of 2 weeks ago at an endurance race at Road Atlanta with this team in a very similar car. I think it was a podium finish with a former champion in World Challenge competition, Patrick Long.
Yeah, and that's a great fit for Jan with the Wright Motorsports Group. He's been involved with the team, I think, 7 or 8 seasons now, mainly in a coaching capacity with a lot of their customer racing programs, but he's also a big friend with Patrick Long. I think they shared an apartment at one time down in the St. Petersburg area where Jan continues to live. So Pat Long won a World Challenge Championship back in 2017, so pretty cool.
I think Scott Hargrove was the 3rd driver in that program, wasn't it, with those two? And he's a former champion in World Challenge, so
the sprint championship. Burst
well
out of the blocks with Pfaff Motorsports St. Petersburg a couple of years ago.
Well represented, that's for sure. There's Jan. Oh, he just attacks.
He does. He keeps searching for more.
Yeah.
There's no give up in terms of the chase, and there's no give up in the search for speed.
Right at that turn 4-5 area, maybe it was in, I think it was in 6, is in qualifying where he had that quick spin. I mean, he just was relentless in his pursuit here.
If you don't get involved with another race car, this is one track that you can attack and try and find that little bit of speed. And typically without consequences. We talk about old school racetracks in terms of the immediate consequences with a mistake. This is one you can sometimes get away with when you're pushing the limits.
And as we were watching Russell Ward here in this Tech Met Windward Racing machine, let's get down to Ryan Marine's got an update. And the driver who just climbed out of the car, Alec Udell.
Yes, and we'll talk about Alec in just a second. I did want to quickly clean up what happened on the pit stop. Evidently, they had the wheel gun, and it went in the reverse direction at one point, and that was what the holdup was. They did lose a little bit of time during the pit stop as a result, but Alec Udell, not a bad stint, I would say, considering he only had about 4 or 5 laps in this Mercedes-AMG GT3 prior to this weekend. That was at a test day at VIR several months ago, but Alec wouldn't agree with my assessment. He said, yeah, it was just all right. He said he was pretty frustrated that he couldn't make more progress, couldn't make any passes. He gave a lot of credit to Shelby Blackstock, who just didn't make any mistakes over the course of all the pressure that Alec put on him over the course of that stint. He said the biggest thing that he noticed was just a general lack of grip in the track surface that caught him and the team a little bit by surprise, but it seems like it's affected everyone pretty evenly, because as unhappy as Alec was with the car on handling, especially exiting the corners, didn't seem like it was any worse off than anybody else. So it does seem like, especially with the heat, but even just in general, the track might not have the kind of grip that some of the teams were expecting, and it is making the drivers really have to earn their keep here this week, and they're up on the wheel.
And we love watching that. Watching these guys at this level get out there and really have to sort of pick the car up a little bit. That's one of the great joys, isn't it, Cal?
It is. You know, the driver can really make a difference, and we've talked about it many times with the length of this circuit, just under 3.5 miles, 20 turns. So if you can just find a little bit of grip, it can really make a difference when you put 20 corners together. It's like, where did they find that half a second? Well, you're not looking at much each corner to make that up.
It's one of the real amazing things in this sport. Somebody who's been around it for a long time, but just the margins can be so scant over long tracks like this in the hands of the really, really great top flight drivers.
Speaking of margins, Baptista has inched away from Hinman. Gap now up to 2.6 seconds, as his last lap was about a quarter of a second quicker than Trent's. It seems like the Ferrari's balance is staying with Rodrigo, so the team has really done an excellent job, as we mentioned. Didn't roll off the trailer exceptionally quick. Bit of a handful, Martin had said, and but once we got to qualifying last night, they must have made some nice changes in the right direction, because it has come to life.
Yeah, looking really, really stout. Here's Hinman in the Acura Accelerated Services Racer's Edge car, chasing this Hublot Concourse Club and Ferrari Fort Lauderdale Ferrari. There's Trent. It's been an interesting few years for him. I mean, when he was a real young guy, just starting to make a mark here, he was pretty much accepted as one of the top up-and-coming young guys who was going to end up at that time racing with BMW. Looked like he was going to be a for sure thing for them, and they let him sort of slip through the net, and he went for a couple of years and landed and did some co-driving in Porsches, and immediately impressed there. And but boy, has he found a home with Acura, and they seem to really like him.
Yeah, he won a GT4 championship with the BMW back in 2014, when he was really mentored and co-driving with John Edwards, another really bright young talent here in the States. He runs for the BMW factory squad still. And just got into a bit of a shootout over in Europe, and one of the Europeans, Jesse Krohn, actually got the nod over Trent, and suddenly there was nowhere for him to play in the BMW playground the following year, so they had to let him go. And I just feel they really let an amazing talent. I mean, again, there's only so many seats they can fill, so and Jesse's a great young driver as well, but let him go, and he's worked really hard. I mean, he continues to fight and grind and find opportunities, and boy, did he put together it last year, winning a GT3 championship for the Acura brand. They love him, and just keep giving him more and more opportunity. And when he's behind the wheel of one of these GT3 NSXs now, I mean, he is totally in tune with that machine.
Yeah. The thing is, you can be given opportunities, but the key is to then deliver, and he just continues to do that.
Yes, on and off the racetrack. He's really polished, really smart, technically savvy, super fit. I mean, just takes the whole trade and craft of racing very, very seriously.
Keeping an eye on those times here. Ryan Diol just turned a 2:07.4. That's the best in that car. In the race, he sits 5th overall, 3rd in the Pro-Am category. And he's 8.5 seconds adrift of Halen. The problem for Ryan is he turns a 2:07.601 and Halen turns a 2:07.688. That's making it up in real small increments.
About another 500 laps will be there.
The interesting thing here is going to be, well, look at this. Just Halen, Diol, and Marcelli, 2nd, 3rd, 4th in the Pro-Am category, all of them in the 2:07.6 range on their last lap. And Marcelli's less than 4 seconds adrift of Diol. So just a hiccup here by anybody. Problem is, drivers of this caliber, you don't see a lot of hiccups.
No, you got 3 really quick, very competitive drivers in Halen, Diol, and Marcelli, separated by 11 seconds, which is a lot of time for guys like that. They're not going to make a big mistake.
Yes,
you would expect anyway. Curious to know if that car was indeed damaged. We saw David Askew struggle with it a little bit, a couple of quick spins. So we'll have to wait and see overnight if they have to tweak on that to make it a little bit healthier for tomorrow.
Well, I mean, the fact that Diol's running laps very similar to Halen and Marcelli, you'd think if it is damaged, it's not severe, obviously, but still, any little thing. And you get just that little bit of a wrinkle somewhere, and it affects the airflow. And it's not just necessarily over the aerodynamic components, the dive planes and the splitters and such, but it can be ducting inside the car for various components. So,
well, they'll continue to massage this car. They'll want to be a little bit sharper for tomorrow. I mean, they've been working hard. They've been doing a lot of testing. They were at Indianapolis recently in prep for the final race weekend in a couple of weeks. So they've been putting in their work, so you know they expect to win. This is a team of winners, and bringing Stefan Pfeiffer on. He's won a lot of championships and races over the years, so they're really using this year, I think, to really tweak on it, get everything fine-tuned to maybe come back next year and have a real championship charge.
Listening to him roll into the throttle there at the exit of 1. Falls down the hill and heads into these S's. As we said, when Herman Tilke designed this track, he used inspiration from bits and pieces of some of the great tracks around the world that he's had a hand in. This sequence of S's is basically sort of inspired, even almost patterned after the Maggotts-Beckett's complex at Silverstone.
×3.
Yeah, exactly.
Keeps coming at you.
Well, then that's it. The second half of it is he borrowed inspiration from the S's at Suzuka. And when you get done at the end of that long back straight, that turn 12 through 15 section is inspired again, if not just patterned after the stadium section at Hockenheim, and then that triple apex right-hander that we've talked about, 16, 17, 18, that we enjoyed so much, is basically the Istanbul triple left. Just run backwards and it fades away at the exit.
Yeah, he certainly has a lot of maps to work from. He's been very busy over the last decade or more. You see Baptista continuing to push, and the gap bigger than it's been all day long at 3.1 seconds over Hinman. So if either of the cars is fading a little bit, it seems to be Hinman's Acura is going away a little bit more than Baptista's is.
Well, which leads to a question here. We heard at the top when Marcelli was talking about that there was a BOP adjustment to the Acura. Now, when you go from one track to another, the way that SRO BOP is set up, tracks are graded by a certain track, high downforce, mid downforce, low downforce, and almost street circuit. And so there's an automatic BOP that kicks in. The idea being that they try and get it so that no matter what track you're at, all the cars are as equal as possible. But still, you get this different horses for courses. And when you get a change, and if it was a little bit more of a change, it takes a little time to then set the car up, get that set up to be really find the sweet spot for that new BOP setup, whatever it is, if it's ride height related, weight related, etc.
Yeah, and I think there's just horses for courses, no pun intended with the prancing horse leading here, but you know, as we see Martin Fuentes looking at the data, probably exchanging a few texts with the family. Very much a family man based down in Miami, but getting back to the point you made, Greg, yeah, I mean, BOP, I think they made a change to the Acura that affects it generally, and then you got the different categorizations of racetrack depending on how much high speed and downforce there is relating to the corners. So, yeah, it's just going to suit one mark more than in the other, but I think certainly for this team, they struck something. I'd love to know the inside scoop on exactly what they found, but from saying that the drivers were not happy with the car's setup, they have to be happy today with 2 pole positions and pretty much dominating this race.
Absolutely, and for Martin, I think, you know, we've watched him race for a long time. You know, started off, really started to build his name in Ferrari Challenge, and then he moved to the pro ranks here and won a number of AM championships in GT cars, but hadn't had that overall win. And he and Baptista got one earlier in the year. And you know, for him, I think getting some overall wins, if they hang on for this one, I mean, this is very special stuff.
It is, and he's got a busy season running here for the full championship, Rodrigo, and also running with the K-Pac squad, running the Bentleys that they campaigned here. They're now over in the SRO Endurance Championship, so he's got a busy finish to the year. Lots of races left for this young man.
Absolutely. And, we are sure fortunate that Flying Lizard saw something in him and had him come over and race with them and start things off in that GT4 Porsches. And I still go back, was it 2 years ago, to what he did at Watkins Glen.
Yeah, just dominated. Just what, about 10-second victory against the best in the business. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was the eye opener. Here is Kyle Marcelli. He's closing on Diol.
He's
not by a chunk, but he's there.
Look at his lap time right now. He's running laps a little bit quicker than Hinman, so maybe his car was set up a little bit more for the longer run compared to Hinman. Maybe they're just trying to get the jump around the Ferrari in the early going for the 93 car that runs second compared to Marcelli that was a bit deeper in the pack.
Which makes sense. I
Yeah,
mean, if you're on the
absolutely.
back foot a little bit and you are fortunate enough to catch a caution and get a reset, you want a car that's going to be good at the end.
The Racers Edge team closely following what's going on.
Pretty content. Obviously, that little fumble with pit stop on this one where it looked like he had missed his marks a little bit and struggled to get the refueling done.
MBRP on the side of the car is Martin Barkey's Performance Exhaust Company.
You see the gap. So you've got Marcelli trying to chase down a car. You got his teammate Hinman trying to chase down Baptista, where the gap has now exploded a little bit. Now it's up to 4¼ seconds. So Baptista's just driving away here.
And as we're watching Rodrigo Baptista in this beautiful Hublot Ferrari, let's check in with Ryan.
As you guys had talked about, the driver pairing was not thrilled with the handling of this race car earlier in the weekend, but they were committed to trying a bunch of different things until finally something sticks. And of course, they won't give away any secrets. They won't tell me what it is that they've changed. But one thing that they did hint at me was before they had a car that was more of a flowing car through the S's. Now it actually is a bit more violent. They say it kind of bounces around through the S's. It doesn't necessarily look like a great handling car or a fast car, but it goes faster. And as Martine told me, hey man, it's whatever works.
Well, that's a fact, and we had talked about that, particularly right through here. It just starts there's that bounce and then there, and it just pogos a little bit, but it stinks.
Yeah, and trying to read into Brian's read that he got from the team, but they didn't want to give away any secrets, but maybe they just stiffened up the roll stiffness a little bit. I mean, the key, you've got to change direction so quickly around this racetrack. If the car's a little softer, it's lazy on the front end. When you go left, right, or right, left very quickly, you don't want to be waiting on the race car, so maybe they just stiffen the car up a little bit to give it that platform, and might feel a little bit more edgy. You're up on the knife edge a little bit more, but if the lap time is there, the drivers will just deal with that.
Well, when you're operating at the sharp end of professional GT racing, you know, the drivers are, sometimes you have to adapt to the car a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, and I think, you know, got two really gifted drivers as well. So Martine, not recognized as a pro, but he's almost at pro level. I mean, he's got so much experience to deal with the car that maybe is not quite as comfy. And when you stick a young man like Rodrigo behind the wheel, he'll just give me a fast race car. I'll deal with it.
And we're into our final 8 minutes. This 90-minute, again, 9th round for the GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. Keeping an eye on those chases now. Diol, he has been able to, want to see what this margin is here as they come through. Yeah, he's got it back up to over 4 seconds, 4.3 Diol to Marcelli. And Halen, every time Diol uncorks a couple of good laps, trims that a little bit, Halen responds, and it's right at that 10-second margin. So just in one of those scenarios here where right now there's big gaps between all the cars, and caliber drivers we have behind the wheel, as you said, they're not prone to those mistakes that suddenly cost you 2-3 seconds.
Yeah, and I think the key is there's something to really look forward to for tomorrow, Greg, when you have these finishing drivers starting tomorrow, because the pace is very, very close. I mean, certainly Baptista seems to have the edge over the complete field. But then when you look a little bit deeper, you got Hinman and Halen, very similar in pace. Then you got that batch there with Diol and Marcelli, are really tight.
And then you've got to, once again, execute those pit stops to perfection. And one of the things I really like is that, you know, you have to have that minimum stop time be something that it's possible, you know, to get everything done in that window. But what I like is that they keep it snug, so it's not like you've got, you know, you generally are going to have 10 seconds to play with, so don't worry about it. I like the fact that they have to get the execution by that entire team into this. You know, it's a team sport. It's a chance for those crews to really show their stuff, and when they nail them and they come out and it's you know, 0.2, 0.3 off of that minimum time and you leapfrog somebody, that's something very special for those teams.
It is, and I don't think anyone used their joker today. Enables you to be within 1 second of that minimum stop time. So you'd have to think that all of those teams will try and work on their software tonight and make sure they take advantage of that tomorrow. Really great run here by Rodrigo. Just got up on the wheel really quick, gapped him, and they left the pit lane a little bit closer, but by the end of that opening lap, you know, that ability to push hard on not cold tires, because they're the tire warmers these days, but there's pretty warm ambient temperatures out here this afternoon in the mid-80s. But even so, car is still a bit edgy and not coming to life. And there you see him continuing to push. I mean, he's just not cruising here. He is up on the wheel, elbows out, and just really wringing its neck here in the final few minutes of this race.
He's in that zone, isn't he? Just you've got a rhythm, and sometimes you start backing off a little bit, and that's when the issues can happen. Here's Jan Halen, and I thought, you know, yes, his outlap was superb, but the next lap, when he basically set fast lap of the race, and was 3 to 4 tenths faster than Hinman, I think that outlap plus that, it was just like, boom. There I am. I've got that margin now. Come after me. And to date, Hinman hasn't had an answer.
No, he pushed. It looked like he had an opportunity about a handful of laps in. Looked like maybe it was switching in the other direction, but just a momentary sort of crossover. And Baptista continued to run really impressive pace. Not that Trent didn't put in a great run here today, but just didn't have the sharpness in the car that they were looking for. And maybe some of that is relating to the BOP situation, which Carl Marcelli brought up with the Acura's taking a little bit of a hit. So we'll have to wait and see what they can do tomorrow and learn from today. Qualifying runs are one thing, then a long race pace is another.
Exactly.
See what Halen does through here. This turn 19, I saw him in qualifying, really leaping over that inside curb. There you see it. Don't see anyone else really doing that to that extent.
Not to that level, and that car barely moved.
Yeah.
That says something. Yeah, that Equitable Hopkins Investments Porsche from Wright Motorsports is really working. Here comes Diol. And that DXDT Yusalko. Mercedes AMG GT3. And, well, not this time. Next time by, we would think the white flag would be coming out.
Yeah, 2 more laps to go. This has been all about execution for this team, just really strong. Great start by Martin, withstood the pressure initially from Shelby Blackstock. Alec Udell that was keeping him honest. Great strategy with the pit stop and great execution within half a second than the minimum, and Baptista immediately up to speed, good out lap, fastest lap of the race, controlled the gap, and extended the gap at the end. I mean, I think they ticked every box here today.
Yeah, it really has been a superb performance. The driver's team and a clearly well-working chassis. Picking the throttle up and making this long run.
Yeah, car's really balanced and not squirming around under power out of there. They have the traction control settings they can work with as the tire deck gets a little bit higher late in the race, but nonetheless, just a really strong setup here.
And he's now opened that margin up to pushing 6 seconds. And Hinman, of course, knows that he's got the class win, unless anything untoward happens here, but he's got almost half a minute now over Ward, so.
They'll continue their unbeaten run for Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman in the silver class. They haven't had a ton of competition this year, but when anyone has shown up to throw down the gauntlet, they've been up to the task.
They've had people obviously out-qualify in the silver class, Indy Donche being one, but come race time, that Racer's Edge team, those 2 drivers do the job. But here, Fuentes and now Baptista, white flag, 1 to go for a 2nd overall win on the season potentially. Another Pro-Am category win, and that margin on that lap alone now up to over 6 seconds.
Yeah, just really solid. I mean, last lap of the race essentially, bar one, and he's within a second of his best lap of the day, Baptista. So just really great consistency, and also great testimony to the latest generation of the Pirelli P0 that it can hang on a racetrack in pretty warm conditions. A lot warmer here this weekend than we experienced back in March. So a lot more load being generated, and we see Hinman there really twitchy. He hasn't stopped pushing, that's for sure. Even though there's not much of a chance here unless Baptista makes a real mistake.
I think you bring up a good point with the that new iteration of the Pirelli P0. Virtually every driver has said they really, really like it, and they said over a single lap it's maybe not as fast as last year's tire, but over a stint it's significantly better. It's more predictable, and it just seems to have a little bit more life. You can push harder at the end, as you said, and to a person they've all said they really like this new tire.
Yeah, and I think particularly for the gentleman driver in the Pro-Am lineups, I mean, that's what they're looking for, a tire that's consistent. It allows you to work on your craft. If you get to, you look at a graph and you suddenly, your performance is getting better, but the tire drops off, it's hard to evaluate. But if the tire's staying with you, it allows you to keep working on your lines, working on your lap as the Racers Edge group get ready to celebrate another class win here this afternoon.
Yep, the gentleman in the white shirt is John Meraki, the team principal. He's done just a marvelous job guiding this team up into the top, very top ranks of GT racing here. But for Squadra Corsa TR3, the Hublot Ferrari Fort Lauderdale and Concourse Club Ferrari, started by Martin Fuentes, now in the hands of Baptista. Ferrari wins at Circuit of the Americas, second overall win, and there's a great celebration with the crew at the line. Winning in the silver class, the Acura Accelerated Services Acura NSX for Racer's Edge. The team leans out, gives their driver Trent Hinman a big thumbs up as well for that win. Just an absolutely superb performance. Third overall is going to be the silver TechMet Mercedes of Russell Ward. And then coming home here, got a little bit of a ways to get there, is Jan Halen, who should be second in the Pro-Am category for Wright Motorsports. Here comes Russell with that great opening stint as well by Alec Udell. And then Diol in the number 63 Mercedes from DXDT Racing. Here's Jan working through the stadium section.
Well, this will have been a bit of a test session, I think, for Jan Halen as well. He'll be really trying to think about how can he improve this race car for the start tomorrow. He'll be starting on the front row alongside Rodrigo Baptista. So looking at his fastest lap here today, about 3/10 off Baptista's best, which is a similar margin to what we saw in qualifying. So he and John Wright and the engineers there at Wright Motorsport have got to figure out a solution. How can we at least make a bit of a race of it in the early going at least tomorrow?
Absolutely, and obviously Fred got caught up in that incident up at turn one. If that hadn't happened and been able to stay in it, who knows, but nonetheless come through with a second in Pro-Am in this team in this championship's first appearance in the Pro-Am category. Yeah, a little farther off the mark than they would have liked, but still ending up second. Here comes Diol. He and David Askew for DXDT will bring it home third, and there is Kyle Marcelli along with Ziad Gandour, come home fourth in the Pro-Am category. And yeah, for Jan Halen, maybe he calls the guys back at the Cafe Racer bike shop he bought in Dunedin, Florida. Just sort of tootling around here. But the fastest tootler was Rodrigo Baptista, and that was at second lap, I think, after the stop. He laid down that 2-minute 6.797, and that remains the CrowdStrike fastest lap award. And it was a beauty. Served notice right away. Yeah, that was nice. Trent came by, and you could see Trent give him a big thumbs up out the window.
Yeah, he just realized that Baptista just had that vital 2 or 3 tenths on him today, and even more at the end when the tire wears it at its highest.
So here's a look at the results, and again, you know, you take a look here and we realize that the car count, if you will, is not what we'd like it to be, but this is a category, GT3 racing, especially in GT World Challenge racing. There's a big international contingent, and once that COVID pandemic hit and the travel restrictions, it just really changed the ability of drivers and teams to be able to make it. And people always, I'm sure, looking at the abundance of caution approach here in certain circumstances, but there's no question that the teams that have shown up, and they've done a great job. We need to thank the teams, because if everybody doesn't follow the protocols that have been set out based on regulations for the various venues that we're racing in, you know, we get that protocol list before every event. Here's the changes. Here's what we got to do, and they've been doing it to perfection. These teams have come out and put on some great racing. And taking a look back at the highlights here for this 9th round of the championship, Martin Fuentes from pole, a little bit of a challenge there, but then David Askew getting into the side of the number 20 of Poor Dad and snapped him around, and that really changed the dynamic of this race.
Yeah, it really did. But meanwhile, at the front, Martin got the hammer down, kept that gap right around 1 to 2 seconds for most of the race. Whenever Shelby got a little bit closer, Martin would respond. So it was a brilliant opening stint by him.
Every time Shelby looked in the mirror, it was a silver Mercedes of Alec Udell that was just hounding him relentlessly as well. And they were always covered almost by that proverbial blanket here. Good little scrap at one point here between Ziad Gandour and David Askew. And Askew watched the run he made as Gandour swung over to try and protect, and Askew just went the other way, and he was through.
Yeah, he just got the wheel straight and hammered down and leapt ahead. And he just got a little bit behind going through the S's there. Quick spin, wasn't his only one of the day, but meanwhile, James Sofron, it's great to see him back, and boy, did he perform.
Absolutely stellar run at the time of the checkered flag for the GT Sports Club. I think he was 4th overall and having a superb run, but in the end, it was the Squadra Corsa Hublot Ferrari. And there's the team celebrating as Rodrigo Baptista came through after taking over from Martin Fuentes and bringing home a very impressive win. 2nd one of the season in terms of the overall for that team, and 4th win in the Pro-Am category. And obviously unfortunate the absence we talked about of the 04 car of Kurtz and Brown, who were leading the championship by a point. Family emergency for George. They had to leave, and that would have been a whole different battle perhaps, but again, you have to go out and do what you do. That's what you're here for, and the number 1 guys did exactly that. But again, Hinman and Blackstock continuing their remarkable streak in the silver category. And you see that Nobu Hotels on the back. That's a sponsor that's come on board as well. But well, I'll tell you, what an impressive run they put together. The qualifying, sweeping the pole for both of the races on the weekend here, and then backing this one up. And you know, Baptista just doing a great job. But I have to say again, Martin Fuentes is the AM component of a Pro-Am, and yes, he is one of the fastest AM guys on the planet. I think there's no question of that. But still, to fend off Hinman and Udell for as long as he did, and bring it home in the lead during the pit stop, that was pretty brilliant. The guy he turned it over to is standing by with Ryan Marine.
Yeah, it was a brilliant stint for Rodrigo Baptista, no question about that. Rodrigo, you had to take it home after Martin's really great opening stint. How much pressure were you feeling behind, or were you pretty comfortable throughout your run?
Yeah, I think you said everything. You know, Martin did a good job. The team did a great job on the pit stop. I just, you know, on my out lap and my first lap, I pushed quite hard to try to just stay with the big gap. And then I was just managing the tires, everything, because it wasn't really easy to drive now.
A great performance from you. Congratulations.
Thank
we'll have
you.
step to the side. We'll bring Martin in. And Martin, this really was a team effort to get this car ready. You guys were not happy with it at the start of the weekend.
Yeah.
So to go from that to this, an overall win, what does it say about this group?
It's amazing, like you mentioned. It's a teamwork. We all, we were just going over and over. What are we gonna do? We knew that the circumstances were different than March, so we changed a lot of things, and actually it turned out good for us. So we're very happy for this overall win.
Congratulations.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, great stint for him, and as he talked about, the solution was to make a car that certainly looked a lot edgier, but it was faster.
Yeah, and they could be tough to beat tomorrow. I mean, everyone has the opportunity tonight to learn from today, make a few tweaks, but it's going to be tough sledding and get around that Hublot Ferrari, I feel.
Yeah, and of course for Pordat and Halen and Askew and Diol, they got caught up in that first corner mess, and for Gondor and Marcelli, a little bit of an issue during the pit stop and driver change. And again, keep in mind for the Pro-Am class, guys, it's the Pro that starts tomorrow. You've talked about it. This whole dynamic could be a really different thing. It could be spectacular.
Yeah, I think Jan Helen's going to be up to the task. He's going to want to try and jump Baptista at the start, try and grab that lead up into turn 1 and see if he can hold on to it.
All right, well, let's go down and hear from our winners in the silver class.
Yeah, second overall winners in silver. Shelby Blackstock, you opened the race. You had the first stint. Looked like you were giving it everything you could. That Ferrari looked awfully fast, though. What did it look like from your perspective?
They definitely found some speed coming back from early in the year. I think there's been a little bit of BOP changes over the course of the year, so that definitely helped a little bit. But, I mean, they still didn't put a wheel wrong. They drove a heck of a race. Me and Trent, we're worn out. We're doing qualifying laps for 45 minutes, but our number 93 Races Edge Acura GT3 Evo was still underneath us the whole time. So still go back to the drawing board. Hopefully we can put some good setup changes on it for tomorrow and go get them.
All right, sounds good. We'll talk to you tomorrow, I'm sure. Trent will bring you up here as well. Shelby was talking about running qualifying laps for an entire stint. Around a place like Cota, is that fun, exhausting, some combination of the two?
It's a little bit of everything, Ryan. I mean, Cota's a really physical track to begin with, especially Sector 1, and especially in this NSX GT3 Evo, we make a good amount of downforce. So we're hucking it into the S's pretty hard, and as much fun as it is, it'll definitely wear on you a little bit after 45 minutes to an hour. But either way, big thanks to the Races Edge Motorsports guys. We had some difficulty in practice 1. We weren't able to get any laps, so I'm really proud of the turnaround that these guys were able to do in such a short period of time, getting this car ready to go and in a place where we're competitive. We've progressed every session so far, and I think we'll continue doing that for tomorrow as well.
Yeah, quickly, do you have anything left in the bag of tricks to throw at them tomorrow?
There's always something left. There's always something left if you dig deep enough. So, we got a great group of guys around us. Shelby, obviously, we'll all put our heads together and see what we can come up with for race 2 tomorrow.
We're curious to see what it looks like. Thanks, Trent.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and thank you, Ryan. I love that, hucking it into the S's. And the thing is, when you got a high downforce car, the loads, the G loads on the drivers, those necks, that's why these rather small race car drivers have a middle linebacker size necks to be able to deal with that. As you take a look at the results, again, a little lighter in terms of number, but exciting stuff that we saw, particularly in that first bit of the race. And the nice thing is we get to do it all again tomorrow. Make sure you join us for round 10 of the GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS Championships, combined with round 8 for GT Sports Club America here at Circuit of the Americas.